All right, let's dive right in. We're tackling a massive question today. How does a place go from scattered tribes making the world's oldest pottery to a colossal, unified empire built on pure, ruthless efficiency? We're about to cover a 40,000-year journey that literally created China.
So yeah, how on earth does that happen? I mean, it's not a straight line. It's this incredible story of geography, of a deep love for precious jade, of dynasties that rise and fall in a predictable pattern, and of a massive clash between brilliant thinkers and absolutely brutal warriors. And it all leads to the birth of an empire.
So to even begin to understand the empire, we have to rewind, way, way back, way before any emperors or armies. We're starting in the deep past with the two things that really set the stage for everything to come: the land itself and the culture that grew out of it. Long before a country called China even existed, you had these two massive rivers. Up north, along the Yellow River, people figured out how to grow millet. Down south, the Yangtze River Valley, well, it was just perfect for growing rice. But this wasn't just about farming. These places were like innovation hubs. And get this, the oldest known pottery in the entire world, we're talking 17,000 years old, was found right here. And while other ancient cultures were obsessed with gold, these people prized something different: jade. To them, it wasn't just a pretty stone. It was pure. It was powerful. Now, what's so fascinating is these cultures didn't just stay in their own little bubbles. They started mixing, merging. You can almost see it happening in stages. Smaller groups combine to form bigger ones, and then those bigger ones combine until, bam, you get what historians call a superculture, the Longshan. And this wasn't just a bigger tribe. Think of it more like the first real blueprint for a state. You've got clear social classes, powerful priests, bustling marketplaces, the whole shebang. So, with those cultural foundations in place, we start to enter the age of legends and the very first attempts at creating a unified state. Let's look at what you could call the first draft of Chinese civilization, the early dynasties. The story really kicks off around 2000 BC with this legendary hero, Yu the Great. The tale goes that he united countless tribes to tame the wild, flooding Yellow River by building these massive canals. It was such an incredible feat that it made him the very first ruler, the founder of the Xia Dynasty. And right away, a pattern gets set. A few centuries later, a corrupt Xia king gets overthrown by a guy named Tang, who starts the Shang Dynasty. Then, a few centuries after that, the Shang get defeated by King Wu of the Zhou, who starts what will become the longest ruling dynasty in all of Chinese history. And you can see the cycle perfectly right here. Each dynasty brings something new to the table. The Xia give us the first real large-scale state. The Shang are masters of bronze, and this is huge, they give us the first writing. Then the Zhou come along and introduce a totally game-changing political idea. But look at that last column, reason for fall. Do you see a pattern? It's always about losing legitimacy, which is an idea the Zhou are about to turn into a core belief for millennia. So think about it. How do you justify overthrowing a king and taking all that power for yourself? Well, the Zhou came up with a brilliant and incredibly powerful answer that would shape Chinese politics for thousands of years to come. They called it the Mandate of Heaven, and the idea was simple but absolutely revolutionary. Basically, a supreme god, heaven, gives a ruler the right to rule. It's like a divine permission slip. But, and this is the genius part, that permission slip could be revoked. If a ruler became corrupt or incompetent, heaven would show its anger through things like floods or famines, and that was a signal, a green light for a new leader to rise up and take over. It was both a justification for absolute power and a built-in kill switch for a bad ruler. But here's the great irony. The Zhou kingdom got so big, so successful, that the king couldn't possibly rule it all himself, so he had to give power to local lords. Well, over time, those lords started acting less like governors and more like kings of their own little territories. They started ignoring the actual king. The very system designed to hold the empire together was now slowly tearing it apart. And eventually, that's exactly what happened. The Zhou king became a king in name only. Central authority just evaporated, and China shattered into hundreds of warring states. But this period of unbelievable chaos also became a pressure cooker for some incredible new ideas. Just look at that number, over 170. That's how many independent states China broke into, and every single one of them was fighting for its life. This era, known as the Warring States period, was one of the most violent in human history. It was a brutal, centuries-long battle royale for survival. But all that fighting forced people to get smarter, to innovate. If you wanted an edge, you needed better technology. So iron swords replaced bronze. The crossbow, a total game changer, was invented. Armies got huge, which meant you needed way more food. So iron plows were developed to boost farming, and all that extra trade led to the first coins. And right in the middle of all this violence, thinkers started asking the biggest question of all. How do we fix this mess? This led to an explosion of philosophy called the 100 Schools of Thought. And two major ideas emerged, offering completely opposite solutions. On one side, you've got Confucius. He argued that order comes from people being moral and respecting tradition. Good people create a good society. But on the other side, you had the legalists, and they thought that was just naive. They believed people are fundamentally selfish and can only be controlled by strict laws and really harsh punishments. It was a huge battle of ideas, idealism versus brutal, cold pragmatism. After centuries of this constant warfare, only 7 states were left standing. And one of them, a state from the western frontier that nobody took very seriously, was about to make a choice that would change absolutely everything. That state was Qin. It was considered kind of a backwater, a bit rough around the edges by its rivals. But the rulers of Qin decided to go all in on legalism. They basically decided that morality and tradition were luxuries they just couldn't afford. The only thing that mattered was power. And this quote just says it all. The Qin turned their entire state into a brutally efficient war machine. Your rank in society, it depended on how many heads you took in battle. The entire society was organized for one single purpose: to build the strongest army possible and conquer everyone else. And it worked terrifyingly well. At the Battle of Shangping, the Qin army didn't just defeat their rivals, they captured their entire army. And to send a message to every other state, the Qin general had nearly 500,000 prisoners executed, many buried alive. It was pure psychological warfare. The message was simple: surrender now, or we will wipe you from the face of the earth. After that, the end came incredibly fast. In 256 BC, the Qin just casually swept aside the last Zhou king, ending a dynasty that had been around for 800 years. It was almost an afterthought. Over the next few decades, they picked off the remaining states one by one by one. Then, in 221 BC, the final rival, Qi, surrendered. The wars were finally over. The king of Qin, a man named Zheng, now ruled it all. And he took a new title, something much grander than any king before him: Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. For the very first time in history, all the lands of the Yellow and Yangtze Rivers were united under a single absolute power. China was born. So there it is. The long, winding journey from scattered tribes to a unified empire was complete. A story of innovation, philosophy, and an incredible amount of violence. But it leaves us with this huge, lingering question. What happens when a civilization is born not from shared ideals, but from pure, brutal force? What really is the cost of unity when it's built on blood and iron?